when he began to get letters from his daughter in Paris, where the young couple went for their honeymoon, though he understood that not only had the wedding depleted his wealth, the 1,300 invitations had done that, but even more deflating was the emotional aftermath as his daughter wrote home these letters of distress. He tried unsuccessfully to convince her that she should not make her husband cater to her needs. Instead, she should help this great poet become even greater. And then he wrote a letter to his son-in-law, advising that he should just bear with Yolande and try again, perhaps, and all would be well. By this time, his daughter had decided that sex was the last thing she wanted from County, prompting her father to point out his own difficulties in establishing a satisfying sexual relationship with his own wife. And he also offered the very unhelpful suggestion that sex wasn't, after all, the main thing about marriage. By the end of the disastrous honeymoon, the most celebrated African-American marriage of the 1920s was history. But even as his daughter's marriage came apart, Du Bois was also confronting the realization that his stature as the preeminent African-American intellectual was no longer unchallenged. In 1928, he had tried unsuccessfully to urge African-American voters to abandon their traditional loyalty to the Republican Party of Lincoln and instead support the Socialist Party of Norman Thomas. Then came the stock market crash, 1929, and the subsequent beginning of the Great Depression, and this had a number of effects on Du Bois. Personally, his own finances were in disarray, but it also led to a decline in the number of African Americans willing to subscribe to the crisis, which in turn made Du Bois more dependent on the NAACP, and they had allowed him to be this independent voice as long as the crisis was self-sustaining. African Americans wanted to read his magazine, but with the start of the Depression, as the subscriptions went down, he became more and more dependent on Walter White, who he saw as a not so visionary leader of the NAACP. Walter White did not understand that the Depression was calling upon the NAACP to do something new, to respond to an economic crisis when its whole policy had been about the race issue. So Du Bois began to see the Scottsboro case as a sure sign that if the NAACP didn't change, it would lose the support of black people, not simply to the Communist Party, but to other groups, the black nationalists. He had also had a running battle with Garvey, and he understood the power of black nationalism in the black community. He conceded in his editorials that the communists made a courageous fight against the color line among workers. It was the only political party in the United States that took a firm stand against racism. The Democratic Party didn't, the Republican Party didn't. So he concluded that the NAACP's strategy of gradual reform was maybe the best of the bad choices open to black Americans. And he said that this notion that the communists are putting forward, that black workers are going to unite with white workers. Negroes know perfectly well, he said, that whenever they try to lead a revolution in America, the nation will unite with one fist to crush them and them alone.